Hey Taurus, hope you're doing well. This is going to be a reading for Taurus Sun, Moon, Rising, Venus, and North Node. Take what resonates and leave the rest. Okay, before I even pull deeper into this energy, I have to say something. Whoever this person is, they're trying so hard to keep it together. They're trying to stay logical. They're trying to stay calm. But their heart is moving faster than their mind can keep up. And honestly, Taurus, I don't think this person expected to feel this much for you. There's nervousness here. There's longing here. And there's a growing realization that these feelings aren't going away anytime soon. So let's see where this energy wants to take us. Okay, Taurus, the first thing that's coming through is that this person thought they had themselves figured out. They thought they knew exactly what they wanted. They had a type. They had preferences. They had a vision for how their life was supposed to look and who was supposed to fit into it. And for a long time, they felt pretty confident about those choices. But then something shifted because you showed up. And honestly, I don't think they were prepared for that. You know, sometimes someone enters your life and nothing really changes. You enjoy their company, you appreciate them, and life keeps moving. But this feels different. This feels like someone who walked into their world and quietly changed the atmosphere without even trying. I'm seeing the star card here, and what strikes me isn't excitement. It's relief. It's almost like this person didn't realize how exhausted they were until they encountered your energy. There is something about you that feels genuine to them. Something that doesn't require performance or pretending. Around you, they don't feel the same pressure to be somebody else. And that's uncomfortable for them in a strange way. Because this person is used to chasing things. They're used to proving themselves. They're used to pursuing whatever looks impressive from the outside. But now they're sitting here questioning everything they thought mattered. Okay, and as I move deeper into this energy, the Ace of Cups keeps pulling my attention. Not because this person suddenly became emotional overnight. Actually, I think they've been fighting these feelings for a while. I think they've been trying to explain them away, trying to convince themselves that this connection would eventually lose its intensity, that they would wake up one day and feel normal again. But it hasn't happened. Instead, these feelings seem to be growing, quietly, consistently, almost in the background. And I keep hearing this person asking themselves a question. Why do I keep thinking about Taurus? Why does their presence stay with me after they've already left the room? Why do I feel calmer when I hear their voice? Why do I care so much about what they think? Because honestly, Taurus, I don't think this person expected you to matter this much. I think they expected you to be temporary. I think they expected this to be another chapter, another experience, another connection. But now they're realizing that you're becoming something much harder to categorize. The Six of Cups is showing up, and there is this overwhelming feeling of familiarity around you. Not because you've known each other forever. Not because everything has been perfect, but because being around you feels natural. And that's rare for this person. Very rare. I feel like they've spent a lot of their life adapting themselves to fit different situations, different relationships, different environments. Yet somehow, when they're with you, they don't feel like they have to work so hard. They can just exist. And the strange thing is that they didn't appreciate that at first. They almost overlooked it. Because it wasn't dramatic enough. It wasn't chaotic enough. It wasn't demanding their attention the way other situations once did. But now they're starting to understand something important. Peace has value. Consistency has value. Trust has value. And those qualities are becoming more attractive to them than anything they've chased before. The Queen of Pentacles is standing out so strongly here. And Taurus, this is how they're seeing you. Not as someone who needs to compete for attention. Not as someone trying to convince them of their worth. But as someone who already knows who they are. Someone grounded, someone dependable, someone whose presence feels solid. And honestly, that energy is affecting this person more than they want to admit, because they're realizing how rare it is. They're realizing that a lot of the things they once prioritized suddenly feel superficial compared to what they're experiencing with you. I'm hearing this person think about moments they've shared with you, small moments, conversations, looks, the way you handled situations, the way you remained patient when they were uncertain, the way you didn't force anything. And now those memories keep replaying in their mind, over and over again, almost like they're reviewing evidence, trying to understand why you continue to stand out, why no one else seems to leave the same impression. And honestly, I think that's what's making them nervous. Because the deeper they look, the harder it becomes to dismiss what they're feeling. The harder it becomes to pretend this is just another connection. The harder it becomes to convince themselves they can simply move on. And the more they reflect on everything, the more they realize that Meeting you may have changed the way they look at relationships altogether. Because before, they were searching for excitement. Now they're searching for something real. Before, they were looking for what impressed them. Now they're paying attention to what feels genuine. And that realization is creating a lot of emotions that they're still trying to understand. Because for the first time in a long time, this person isn't just asking what they want. They're starting to ask what truly matters. And the answer they're finding keeps leading them back to you. Okay, Taurus, something else is coming through very strongly here. And honestly, I think this is where things start becoming difficult for this person. Because the moment they began realizing how much you mattered, they also began realizing how much they had been avoiding. I'm seeing the Hermit card, and this doesn't feel like someone finding peace. It feels like someone pulling away because they're overwhelmed by what they're discovering inside themselves. This person has spent a lot of time alone with their thoughts recently. Maybe not physically alone all the time, but mentally, emotionally. They're creating distance from distractions because the noise isn't working anymore. You know, there was a period where they genuinely believed these feelings would fade. They thought time would solve everything. They thought distance would help. They thought if they stayed busy enough, focused enough, distracted enough, eventually you would stop occupying so much space in their mind. But that's not what's happening. If anything, the silence has made everything louder. The Moon card is showing up here, and I have to be honest, this energy feels emotional in a way that surprises even them. Because this isn't just about missing someone. It's deeper than that. It's about finally acknowledging emotions they've been trying to keep hidden, even from themselves. I keep hearing this person replay conversations, replaying moments, replaying things they should have said, things they should have done differently. And it's strange because some of these memories seem insignificant on the surface. A smile, a message, a simple interaction. Yet somehow those moments keep returning, over and over again. Almost like their heart is highlighting something their mind keeps trying to ignore. And I feel like that's exhausting them, because this person isn't used to feeling out of control emotionally. They prefer certainty, they prefer answers, they prefer understanding why they feel what they feel. But you don't fit into a neat explanation, and that's why they keep wrestling with it. Okay, this is interesting. The Eight of Cups is appearing, but it doesn't feel like they're walking away from you. It feels like they're walking away from old versions of themselves, old habits, old ways of coping, old patterns that once felt comfortable. Because the truth is, Taurus, some of the things they used to chase aren't satisfying anymore. The people, the distractions, the temporary excitement. They're finding themselves in situations that used to make them happy, and suddenly they're sitting there feeling disconnected from all of it. And that's confusing, because they don't fully understand why everything feels different now. I keep seeing this person surrounded by familiar faces, yet feeling alone, going through routines they've repeated for years, yet feeling disconnected from them. It's almost like their emotional world is shifting before they've had time to process it. And honestly, part of them wishes it would stop. Part of them wishes they could go back to how things were before. Before they started questioning everything. Before they started noticing your absence. Before they started wondering what could have happened if they had handled things differently. Because once those questions begin, they're very difficult to silence. The Nine of Swords is coming through now, and I don't see this as dramatic energy. I see it as private energy, the kind nobody talks about. The thoughts that arrive when everything becomes quiet. The moments when they're lying awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying scenarios in their head, wondering if they misunderstood something, wondering if they waited too long, wondering if you're moving on, wondering if you still see them the same way. There is so much uncertainty here. And for someone who once acted calm and composed, they're realizing just how deeply these emotions have reached. Because it's not just attraction anymore. It's not just curiosity anymore. This person is emotionally invested, and I think that realization is what scares them most. Because emotional investment comes with risk. It requires vulnerability. It requires honesty. And honestly, Taurus, I don't think vulnerability has always been easy for this person. I feel like they've spent years building walls that made them feel safe. Walls that help them avoid disappointment. Walls that help them maintain control. But those same walls are starting to feel like prisons now. And that's creating an internal conflict that they can't ignore forever. Part of them wants to protect themselves. Part of them wants to remain detached. Part of them wants to keep pretending everything is fine. But another part of them is getting louder. A part that misses you. A part that wonders about you. A part that keeps comparing every experience back to this connection. And honestly, the comparison isn't helping. Because the more they compare, the more obvious the difference becomes. I'm hearing this person think something they haven't said out loud. They're realizing that what they felt with you wasn't ordinary. And maybe they didn't appreciate it when they had the chance. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they convinced themselves there would always be more time. But now they're looking at everything through a different lens. And that perspective shift is impossible to reverse. The thing that's really standing out is that they're no longer running because they don't care. They're running because they care too much, because every step away seems to pull them back emotionally. Every attempt to disconnect somehow reconnects them. Every effort to forget only reminds them of what they're trying to forget. And the deeper they go into this period of reflection, the harder it becomes to deny what's sitting at the center of all these thoughts. Because beneath the confusion, beneath the fear, beneath all the questions they're asking themselves, there's a truth slowly rising to the surface that they're finally starting to see clearly. Okay, this energy is shifting, Taurus, and honestly, I don't think this person can keep seeing the world the way they used to. Because what I'm picking up now feels bigger than emotions. It feels like perspective. It feels like someone standing in front of a version of their life that no longer makes sense. And I have to say it, the Tower card is here, not as a sudden dramatic event, not as chaos for the sake of chaos. It feels more like the collapse of an illusion. Like someone waking up and realizing they've been building parts of their life around beliefs that don't actually make them happy. You know what's interesting? I don't think this realization happened all at once. I think it arrived in pieces, small moments, small disappointments, small truths they kept trying to ignore, until one day they couldn't ignore them anymore. And now they're looking around at certain people, certain situations, certain priorities, and asking themselves a question they've never really asked before. Why am I still holding on to this? Because the things that once seemed important are starting to lose their grip. The things that once felt exciting don't carry the same energy anymore. It's almost like they're outgrowing an old version of themselves. And honestly, that's not comfortable. Because growth sounds beautiful when people talk about it. But when you're actually living through it, it can feel lonely. It can feel confusing. It can feel like you're losing pieces of yourself before you know what comes next. I keep seeing this person observing people differently, listening differently, paying attention differently. There are conversations they used to enjoy that now feel empty. There are environments they used to thrive in that now feel exhausting, and they can't fully explain why. The only thing they know is that something inside them has changed. Judgment is showing up now. And this feels like one of those moments where a person can no longer pretend they don't know what they know. You know what I mean? There comes a point where awareness changes everything. Once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you understand what matters, it's very difficult to keep investing your energy into things that don't. And that's exactly where this person feels stuck. Because they're looking back at certain choices they've made, and they're seeing them differently. They're reviewing their life through a completely different lens. Not from a place of self-hatred, not from a place of punishment, just honesty, pure honesty. And that honesty is uncomfortable, because I think they're realizing how often they confused attention with connection. How often they confused excitement with fulfillment. How often they chased things that looked valuable instead of things that actually felt valuable. And Taurus, you keep appearing in the middle of those realizations. Not because you're demanding attention. Not because you're trying to convince them of anything, but because every road seems to lead back to the same question. What if the thing I was looking for was never where I thought it was? The 10 of Swords is coming through, and honestly, this feels like the ending of an internal story. A story they've been telling themselves for years. A story about who they needed to be, what success looked like, what relationships should look like, what happiness was supposed to look like. And one by one, those old narratives are falling apart. I keep hearing this person say something like, I don't even recognize myself anymore. Not because they're becoming someone worse. Actually, the opposite. Because they're becoming more honest, more authentic, more aware. But awareness changes things. Awareness asks difficult questions. And awareness doesn't let you comfortably settle into old patterns forever. There are people around them noticing the difference too. I have to mention that. Some people are supportive. Some people aren't. Because whenever someone starts changing, it forces others to look at themselves. And not everyone likes that. So there may be people questioning their decisions, questioning their distance, questioning why they're pulling away from certain situations, questioning why their priorities seem different. But this person isn't changing for those people. They're changing because they can't keep living in a reality that no longer feels true. And honestly, Taurus, I think that's where you unknowingly became part of this transformation. Because your presence challenged something, not through pressure, not through force, but through contrast. You showed them another way of being, another way of living, another way of connecting. And once they experienced that, it became harder to settle for less. The Sun card is appearing here, and I love how it arrives after all this heavy energy, because what I'm feeling isn't perfection, it's clarity. It's somebody beginning to understand themselves, somebody beginning to recognize what genuinely brings them peace. And that clarity is affecting everything, the decisions they make, the people they trust, the future they're imagining, the goals they're pursuing, all of it. It's almost like they're stepping out of a room they've been trapped in for years, not because somebody rescued them, because they finally found the courage to open the door themselves. And what's fascinating is that the more clarity they gain, the less interested they become in superficial connections, the less interested they become in chasing validation, the less interested they become in maintaining appearances. Because something more meaningful is beginning to take shape inside them, something that feels real, something that feels worth protecting, something that feels worth changing for. And honestly, I don't think they're fully prepared for where this realization is leading them. Because the deeper they step into this new chapter of their life, the more impossible it becomes to ignore who has been standing at the center of all these changes from the very beginning. Okay, something feels different now. Not because all the answers have appeared overnight, not because everything is suddenly perfect, but because this person is no longer trying to outrun what they feel. And honestly, Taurus, that's a much bigger shift than it sounds. Because for a long time, this person believed they could manage this connection from a distance. They believed they could keep everything compartmentalized, keep their emotions over here, keep their daily life over there, keep moving forward without ever fully addressing what was happening inside them. But that strategy isn't working anymore. The energy feels quieter now, but much more intentional. I'm looking at the Hierophant, and what stands out isn't pressure or obligation. It feels like someone beginning to think seriously about what commitment actually means. Not what it looks like to other people. Not what society says it should be. What does it mean to them? Because I think that's the question they've been avoiding. You know, this person may have spent years believing that freedom meant never getting too attached, never relying on anyone, never allowing another person to have too much influence over their decisions. But now they're discovering something unexpected. There is a difference between losing yourself in a connection and choosing a connection. And I feel like they're beginning to understand that difference. For the first time, they're not looking at commitment as something that takes away their freedom. They're starting to see it as something that could actually add meaning to their life. And that's a very new perspective for this person. Very new. The Six of Swords is coming through, and honestly, this feels emotional, because I think they're carrying a lot of regret. Not the kind of regret that makes someone feel sorry for themselves. The kind that makes someone wish they had handled things differently. There are moments they keep revisiting, words they wish they had spoken, opportunities they wish they had taken, situations where they now realize fear was making decisions for them. And the difficult part is that they can't go back and change those moments. They know that, they understand that, which is why I keep hearing this energy of responsibility. Not blame, responsibility. They're beginning to recognize that if they want something different, they have to become different. And honestly, Taurus, I think that's why this energy feels so mature compared to what came before. Because they're no longer sitting around waiting for circumstances to change. They're looking inward. They're asking themselves difficult questions. They're examining their own behavior, and that's not easy. Especially for someone who once preferred avoidance over confrontation. I keep seeing this person remembering your patience, remembering the way you showed up, remembering how many chances they may have had to be honest. And those memories aren't leaving them alone. Not because they're being punished, because they're finally seeing things clearly. And when clarity arrives, accountability usually follows. The Knight of Pentacles is here now, and honestly, I love this energy for your reading. Because this doesn't feel rushed, it doesn't feel impulsive, it doesn't feel like somebody making grand declarations they can't back up. Actually, it's the opposite. I feel like this person is becoming suspicious of words, even their own words, because they know words are easy. Promises are easy. Intentions are easy. Anybody can say they care. Anybody can say they're serious. Anybody can say they've changed. But what happens after the conversation ends? What happens when nobody is watching? What happens over time? That's what this person is thinking about. And honestly, I think that's why they're becoming quieter. Not because they're losing interest, because they're realizing that if they ever want you to believe them, it can't come from what they say. It has to come from what they do. I keep hearing them think, I know they deserve more than explanations. I know they deserve more than apologies. I know they deserve consistency. And that realization is changing the way they approach this entire situation. Because Taurus, whether they admit it or not, they know you've reached a point where words alone won't move you anymore. You're not looking for potential. You're not looking for promises. You're looking for evidence. And honestly, they know that. The Queen of Swords is standing here, and I have to smile because this feels so important. This energy feels like truth, not comfortable truth, not convenient truth, real truth, the kind that cuts through excuses. And I think this person is finally having a conversation with themselves that they've postponed for a very long time. No more blaming timing. No more blaming circumstances. No more blaming confusion. They're asking themselves, what do I actually want? And once they answer that question honestly, another question immediately follows. What am I willing to do about it? Because wanting something and building something are two very different things. And this person is beginning to understand that. I also feel like they're becoming more direct in other areas of their life. Certain friendships feel different. Certain habits feel different. Certain priorities are shifting. It's almost like they're cleaning house emotionally, removing distractions, removing noise, removing anything that keeps them disconnected from what matters most. And honestly, I don't think everybody around them understands this change. Some people may even resist it, because whenever somebody grows, it alters relationships. It changes dynamics. It changes expectations. But this person seems less concerned with pleasing everyone than they used to be, because their attention keeps returning to the same place. The same person, the same connection. And the more seriously they think about the future, the harder it becomes to imagine that future without addressing what still remains unfinished between the two of you. Okay, something feels settled inside this person in a way that I haven't seen throughout the rest of this reading. Not settled because every obstacle has disappeared. Not settled because every fear is gone. But settled because they're finally becoming honest about what they want. And honestly, Taurus, that changes everything. Because indecision has been part of this story for a long time. Second guessing, overthinking, questioning, trying to analyze emotions instead of experiencing them, trying to find the perfect answer before taking a single step forward. But that energy is fading. I keep feeling this sense of acceptance, not acceptance of losing you, acceptance of what you mean to them. The Lovers is here, and what stands out isn't romance in the traditional sense. It's choice, a conscious choice, the kind of choice that happens when someone stops running from themselves. Because that's what this feels like. It feels like a person finally recognizing that every path they've been exploring keeps leading them back to the same realization. No matter how much they distracted themselves, no matter how many other priorities demanded attention, no matter how many explanations they created, something about this connection remained. And now they're looking at it differently, not as a complication, not as a problem to solve, not as something to avoid, but as something worth protecting, something worth investing in, something worth building. I keep hearing this person reflect on the future in a way they never used to. You know, before, the future may have felt abstract, focused on personal goals, personal achievements, personal ambitions, and those things still matter. But now there's another element showing up, another presence inside the picture they're creating for themselves. And honestly, I don't think they expected that. I don't think they expected another person to become part of the vision they held for their life. Yet here you are. Every time they imagine stability, every time they imagine peace, every time they imagine what success would actually feel like, your energy somehow appears there. And that's making them ask questions they've never seriously considered before. Questions about partnership, questions about building something lasting, questions about what it means to truly share a life with someone. The Four of Wands is appearing now, and I love the feeling attached to it, because it feels calm, not dramatic, not chaotic, not based on uncertainty. This feels like someone beginning to understand the difference between excitement and security. And honestly, Taurus, I think security is becoming incredibly attractive to them, not because they're settling, because they're maturing, because they're beginning to recognize that real happiness often looks quieter than they once imagined. It's found in consistency, in trust, in showing up, in knowing somebody is there. I keep seeing this person realizing that they don't want temporary experiences anymore. Not in the way they once did. The things that used to satisfy them for a moment no longer feel enough. And that's creating this strong desire to build something that actually lasts. Something that continues growing instead of constantly restarting. Something that has roots. The Ten of Pentacles is showing up here, and honestly, the energy around it feels powerful. Not because this person is focused on appearances. Not because they're dreaming about some perfect fantasy. What I'm feeling is somebody beginning to think long-term. Really long-term. And that's new. Because I don't think they used to think this way when it came to relationships. I think they used to focus on what felt good today. What solved today's problem? What made today's emotions easier to manage? But now they're asking themselves, where is this leading? What kind of life am I creating? Who do I actually want beside me as the years pass? And every time they ask those questions honestly, they find themselves returning to the same answer. Not because they're forcing it, because it's becoming increasingly difficult to imagine otherwise. And honestly, Taurus, I think that's what has surprised them the most. Not the depth of their feelings, the consistency of them. Because emotions can be intense and disappear. Attraction can be powerful and fade. Excitement can arrive quickly and leave just as quickly. But this stayed. Through distance, through confusion, through change, through everything they've been processing internally. And that consistency is making them take it seriously. The Queen of Pentacles is appearing again, and the way they're seeing you feels different now. More grounded, more complete. I don't think they're idealizing you. Actually, I think they're seeing you more clearly than ever. They see your strengths, they see your imperfections, they see your humanity, and somehow that makes their respect for you grow even more. Because what they're valuing isn't perfection, it's authenticity, it's reliability, it's character, it's the way you've remained true to yourself. And honestly, I feel like that's inspiring them. I feel like part of this transformation is happening because they're witnessing what emotional stability looks like through your example. Not because you're trying to teach them, because you're simply being yourself. And that's creating a powerful effect. I keep hearing this person think something they've never fully admitted before. Not to you. Maybe not even to themselves. It's the realization that when they imagine the next chapter of their life, they don't automatically see themselves standing alone anymore. For someone who spent so much time protecting their independence, that's a huge shift. Because now they're beginning to understand that sharing a future with someone doesn't have to mean losing themselves. Sometimes it means becoming more of who they really are. And honestly, the more they sit with that realization, the more real this connection begins to feel, the more possible it begins to feel. The more they start wondering, what could happen if they stopped focusing on everything that could go wrong and finally allowed themselves to explore what could happen if they chose to move toward what feels right. All right, Taurus, that's all I have for you today. And I have to say, this feels like one of those connections that leaves a mark on someone's life long after they try to move past it. Whatever is unfolding here, it feels like a period of deep reflection, honest realizations, and important choices. So trust your own intuition and take only what resonates with your situation. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this space with me. Your support truly means more than you know. If you enjoyed the reading, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again for the next one. Until then, Taurus, be gentle with yourself, keep focusing on your own journey, and let life reveal what it needs to reveal one step at a time. I'll catch you in the next reading. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.